All right, all right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to On the Count podcast. Today we have an awesome guest, and she is already smiling and laughing. Her name is Joyce Johnson. She's a retired case manager from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. We worked together. I can't remember how many years we got the chance to work together. We really worked together for 5 or 6 years while I was a counselor and she was a case manager in basically in the same unit on the same unit team. We did a lot of work together, and I'm very proud to just bring her in, Joyce Johnson, Stephens-Johnson, and I know some of her background, but I keep reading stuff that you keep posting, Joyce, and that's one thing I want to get on and a few get started because something I wrote today, and I know you come from what I call humble background,
Mhm.
growing up in West Virginia.
Yes.
And a
That's
lot of
that's as humble as it comes.
yes, a lot a lot of stuff. She has so many awesome stories, not just her life, but and I know at work as well. We just went through a lot of different little things, and a lot of people put their trust on you, on your job, and I know it evolved throughout the years because we started in just seeing different things and how the bureau evolved and how we evolved in our job and things like that. So
Right.
I want to go back to the beginning. Tell us a little bit about you growing up, because that's the one thing I want to know a little bit about first.
Okay. I was born in Morgantown, West Virginia. My dad was a coal miner.
Hmm.
I have two sisters and two brothers. Before I came to the Bureau, I worked for WVU Children's Hospital as a fundraiser. So we did a lot of fundraising development work, asking for donations. We produced a telethon every year for Children's Miracle Network. And since retirement, I've volunteered down at Duke Children's Hospital in their fundraising department.
Nice. So you went back to your roots.
Yeah, back to my roots.
um, Growing up, I know you have some awesome stories that I read. Sometimes you post about your family growing up in Morgantown, West Virginia, because at that time, things were a little bit different than they are today. And Morgantown is also, they have, did you get to work in Morgantown?
No, no, but I had some friends that worked there.
Okay. And just I asked that because County Morgantown does have a big federal prison there as well in Morgantown.
I
Uh,
know there's buildings in West Virginia somewhere. Every time I go down the highway, like through West Virginia, I see trees, and I'm like, I know people live in this state. It's just off. You got to get off the
oh my,
highway.
Yes,
yes, that's the reason it is called West by God, Virginia. Okay,
almost heaven.
it's just almost yeah, it is climbing mountains and it's incredible the view. And it's like, oh my God, when this is going to stop? Is there anybody out here? Yes, I've been to West Virginia, so yeah, I know
Yeah.
how it is. So Joyce, you worked um, as a fundraiser, but what got you in the prison system?
Well, there was a woman that worked in the same hospital environment that I did. She worked for the School of Medicine. Um, she kept telling me, I'm applying for a job with the Bureau of Prisons. You should apply. And I was like, what are you going to do? Well, she had applied to be a drug treatment specialist. And she got the job and kept saying, the benefits are really good, the pay is really good, you should apply. So I applied to work at FMC Lexington in Kentucky
Hmm.
as a unit secretary. And for some reason, I didn't get hired, but they said, we're sending your application down to Butner because they're activating a new prison and they will have a lot of positions open. So they sent it to Butner, and a month or so later, I got called and applied for the job and got it.
And that was it. What was your first job? Did you come in as a case manager?
No, I came in as a unit secretary down in Durham unit.
Okay, you see, I didn't know that you were a secretary first.
Yeah, for about 2.5 years. And then I went to associate warden secretary for a year and maybe 2 months. And then I got the case manager job.
Oh, nice. You see, I did.
What was your when that job was given to you, case manager job? Of course, you hadn't done it yet. I don't know if you had observed a lot of case managers, but what was your first feeling when that job was offered to you? Because was it offered to you, or is it something you applied for?
You had to apply, so I
Okay.
applied for it, and the warden usually will tell you that you get the job.
And what
So
was your motivation to apply for that particular position?
when I worked as a unit secretary, I worked one on one with the case managers, so I was familiar with their
Mhm.
caseload and the work that they did, and I thought I could do that. So, and it was a chance to promote more money.
Mhm.
Well,
It's funny because it's what you just said is something that I was gonna ask a question about later. Because a lot of times we'll take positions, and there's nothing wrong with that. We want better lives for ourselves, monetarily, position wise, upward movement, and then when we get into that job, the passion becomes different based on what we're experiencing in that job. So the biggest question I wanted to ask you is, what was your I don't want to say thinking, like, how did your approach towards prisoners differ from before you had that position to when you got deep into that position?
Because I was a secretary, I had to interact with them a lot because I would do their release paperwork. So I would have to call them in to get their fingerprints, sign paperwork, um, bring them in to do their halfway house packets. So it didn't really change a
Mhm.
whole lot when I first started as a case manager, but it shifted more after maybe 5 or 6 years when our mission of the institution changed. And we went from just a regular prison to a medical facility. And I had a lot of sicker inmates. Um, so that was kind of like a whole shift
Yeah, I can imagine.
because they were sick.
Mhm.
We had a lot of inmates that died. Um, and you were kind of like the go between medical, their families wanting information, the courts trying to get them out. So it was a total mind shift when we went to a medical unit.
I can imagine. The reason why I asked that, of course, is because me and Pedro always talk about the image of an inmate, a prisoner, convict, whatever however you want to label them. Um, we know there's some seriously bad people that need to be under the prison, but then we also forget that some of them are just people.
Right,
And so shifting into that can give you that realization of, we forget they're people, you
right,
know.
right. And you saw a lot of people,
Mhm.
it made you have a total different mindset of the government from when I first started. I thought this person is wrong. They did what they did. They committed this crime. The government is right. Until you start seeing the same pattern over and over and over again. And we had a lot of inmates that were actually not guilty
Yeah.
and had to fight their cases in court to get out and prove themselves that they were right.
we've talked. Keone and I have talked about that
Mhm.
so often of people not being guilty, and you being the case manager, you get to see all these cases, and you get to see a pattern. You get to see a lot of pattern. The pattern to me also was that a lot of the inmates just could not afford to have a good lawyer. If you could
Right,
afford to have a good lawyer, it was a big difference in either the case, time spent, how they, just things were you know a lot easier. Some of the other people, you start reading their case and be like, oh, this person had a lawyer or somebody to say, well, no, let's do this because you can read the transcripts. And some transcripts I will read. I'm like, well, that made no sense. But why did he go with it?
Especially when someone's found guilty and the only incriminating evidence is eyewitness testimony, because we've learned what that is, and the
Right,
only evidence you have is eyewitness testimony. And
right.
Pedro, you jogged my memory because I was watching a video the other day, of, I watch Forensic Files and other crime shows on YouTube, and someone made the comment of our justice system stinks because how can someone keep going to prison and keep getting let out? And someone made the comment of because not everybody continues that pattern. Some people changes. And one of the things I said in the comment is catching people when they make that minor mistake or that shift. You rob somebody, you get caught, maybe that changes you. It's people who have done it three. When you get caught, sometimes that's not the first time you did it, right? They may have did it 3 or 4 times, and that action was never corrected. Now there are 3 or 4 robberies in, you know. So it's just so many different variables that come into that.
Right, right. I had one inmate, his name was Alberto Albaran. He was a Mexican inmate. And he would always come to me and say, are you going to get me out? And I never really paid much attention to his case. But after he asked me so many times, I thought, let me read his entire file, not just what I needed to know for my job, his entire file. So I read his pre sentence report, and he lived in an apartment with maybe 15 other Mexican inmates that were dealing drugs. And he had a heart condition, goes to the hospital, has open heart surgery, and the DEA raids the apartment. He gets arrested, but the only thing they had in his possession that could prove that he lived in that apartment was a backpack that had his name on it. But they had no evidence of him dealing drugs, no phone calls, no videos, no pictures. He goes to trial, speaks no English, had an English speaking attorney with no interpreter. And he goes through this entire trial and does not understand what's going on and gets sentenced to 450 months. And at the time of the raid, he was recovering from open heart surgery in the hospital. They had no evidence on him. And
Which
I
is
thought,
crazy because I speak English and they're going to ask me 1,000 times, do you understand? Do you understand? Do you
and
understand?
no one spoke Spanish in the hearing. So
Oh,
he was
Wow.
set up from the beginning, and he got 450 months, and people kept telling him, you're going to get out, you're going to get out. And I did make an inquiry into with probation, like, how can you do this? He spoke no English, he had no interpreter, he didn't understand what was going on. He was in the hospital, and he got sick and died before anything could be done.
mm.
And the remarkable thing about that, he was a illegal alien and had no contact with his family. His family didn't know where he was. Um, he never got any visits. He never made any phone calls, anything. And the Spanish inmates kept asking me, what's going to happen to him? I said, they'll bury him in a pauper's grave with an unmarked stone. And they said, not today. They got their network going and tracked down his family so they could send the body back to the family.
Wow. Yeah.
That's one I didn't know that story right there, but that is just nothing uncommon. I saw so many cases. Also, they will get 15 years for conspiracy. The conspiracy. I was like, you read some of the conspiracy is because Keone, you and I were hanging out, and supposedly I'm the drug dealer, but you and I hang out. I said, yeah, he hung out with me all the time. And all I have to say is, yeah, he sold drugs with me. You'd be like, Keone, you'd be like, well, I didn't do that. Just because I accuse you and I want to get out, they come and arrest. They will arrest you. They follow a case. Maybe you can get out of it, but maybe my word is stronger than yours, and you don't have anything to say, and you'll get 15 years
Yes.
just
Yes.
because you were my friend and you probably knew that I was a drug dealer.
And
It,
Pedro could tell on me, and he would get maybe a 5 year sentence, and I would get 20.
Yeah, and you didn't even do anything. If my line of thinking wasn't different before we started this show that we do here, it would definitely have changed. But I was always thinking that way, and it always, it bothers me because Pedro just talked about 15 years for conspiracy. I know people who have committed murder and got less time. And it's just like it's an unbalanced system. Non-violent offenders, how are they getting more time than violent offenders?
Right.
But
it has
that's a whole
changed.
other show.
It has changed, and Joyce, you can probably know more. It does have it has changed over the years.
Hmm.
Some of the laws, some people did see what the famous war on drugs left behind. This is what that came from, and leave all these laws just trying to lock up people all the time for I don't know for a ridiculous amount of time. Because I know Joyce, you had some guys they were doing 25 to 50 years because they were named as the head conspirator or the head leader of the gang.
And yeah,
And I know one guy told me we weren't a gang; it was just three of us. We did, and he said we did sell drugs, okay, but it wasn't a major thing. We were selling; we were just making a little bit of money. Was it wrong? Yes, but I'm doing 50 years.
Well, here's the thing to that, Pedro, because this is what some people are going to say, and I understand their statement. What you just said was, I understand I was dealing drugs, but it was nothing big. Well, you're going to have someone that says, well, you're dealing drugs. What do you mean it was nothing big? Here's the thing, everything is not supposed to be equal. You're 20 years old, it's your first time, you got in trouble. That person, you have time to fix that. Putting that person in jail for 15 years does not fix that. Does not. What you did now is you create a guy who's going to spend. We can't deal sometime with the changes, and we're on the outside from year to year. This guy now spends 15 years in prison. He's coming out 15 years later at 35,
Oh,
and you want him to adjust overnight to the world.
right.
You know,
Joyce,
that's
how many
basically
cases do you remember like that? Guy comes in, he's 20 years old, he got 15 to 20-year sentence.
A lot. Too many to even contemplate. And the funny thing about it is, we say if you get arrested and you come into the system as a 20-year-old, your mindset through your whole incarceration is that of a 20-year-old. It's like they just stop growing. And until they decide, I'm not going to do this anymore, I want to do better, I want to take classes, I want to get out of this whole thing, then that's when they really start to grow.
yeah.
And you saw, I know you saw quite a bit of guys that made that shift. Anyone that really stands out that you remember that kind of stands out in your mind, that shift from, I just want to rip the world apart, I'm fighting all the time, and then all of a sudden just like turn around, a 180.
Yeah. I had one guy named Pledger, Andrew Pledger, old, bitter man in his late 40s, and he stayed with me until he was in his late 50s. And the world was just a bad place, and he didn't want to have anything to do with it. He didn't trust anybody, he didn't like anybody, and he got sick. And who did he have to come to get some help? Me and Mr. Brown. And when, we reminded him, you're always so old, you're bitter, we haven't done anything to you, we're here to help you. And once he saw that we were going to help him, then his whole mindset shifted. And when he left, he was like a total different person. We were like, what happened? Whole total different mindset.
Nice. And some younger guys too that I know you dealt with that just, oh my God, they come in and they were just wanted to just rip everything apart, but some of them change. I know I saw some change in some of the guys. So
Yes.
I know you just thought about what they just something because you looked up and oh my God, yes.
And, me and Brown talk about this all the time. Um, it was different being a female in a male environment because they saw me as the mom, the sister, the auntie. Um, and I could tell them something and they would do it versus uh, Lugo or Mr. Brown, the counselors, telling them to do it. But it was a general, the white inmates just didn't bother staff at all that much. The Hispanic inmates were very polite, um, very respectful, but the young black inmates, oh,
They came in
that
with a
was a fight every day.
they came in with a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you got to also think about what you. I mean, if you haven't noticed, I'm black. Um, I was born in a very very bad neighborhood, and from the moment I can comprehend, we are taught how the system is out to get us, whether that's right or wrong. It's branded into our head. The system's out to get you. If don't get in trouble, everybody's going to be against you. So any of and it was and you actually sometimes would have the opposite reaction. You're being told that so you can watch out for authority, but you're not respecting it. And when authority comes, you already all that starts to come back up. How you were told this was going to happen.
right,
I had a cousin who was eventually released and innocent, but he got in trouble for something. He fit the description, right? Wasn't even nowhere near the incident that happened, but his lawyer came in and gave him two options. You can plead innocent and go to jail for 30 years. You can plead guilty and go to jail for 10. Which one do you want? Like, wait, what do you mean? I didn't do it. I wasn't there. These are your options.
right,
And it's like, so of course, and I'm not making an excuse for everyone, I'm just giving a story. So of course, I know when he gets to prison, you think he's got the right attitude?
right,
No, he's
right,
not. Now, that's few and far. That's not the same as everybody else, but that's just an example. But we also know, like I talked about, there's some people that, it's just like, yeah, you're going to, like me and Pedro talked about it sometimes. I always ask him, did you get an inmate that when you dealt with them, you said, yeah, I'll see him again on the way out. I'll see him again. And then you have the ones where you're like, he's not coming back. I know he's not coming back. You know,
right, right. And I think a lot of it was we had a lot of inmates that were from the inner city and
hmm
they weren't used to a female professional person that worked. They were like, we only saw crackheads and prostitutes. And
yeah.
now we come in here and here's this black woman telling us, no, you can't do that. But yeah, you can do this. Um, it was a big adjustment for them. And they had to finally realize that I was there to help and would
hmm
help them if I could. And I was probably our unit with Lugo and the people in my unit, we were probably the most honest staff. We didn't try to spin them and tell them, oh, yeah, this is going to happen, knowing that it wasn't going to happen. We would tell them, yep, you're going to get this. No, you're not going to be able to do that.
You
So,
know why I believe you, Joyce? Because we've had inmates that have been, um, I don't know if she knows any of the ones that we've had on, Pedro,
Probably
uh,
know a few of them.
whether it was Malcolm. We've had inmates, and we also had Art Bueller on,
oh,
and the inmates and Art Bueller both says the same thing about Pedro and the counselors and staff. So when the warden and the inmates are in agreement, I can tend to believe that's what happened. Um,
right.
you know,
Yeah, we
that's kudos to you
that's
guys.
one thing I did. I like working with the people that I work with. We didn't really have to spend. We had one that was like, I'm not going to mention his name because, but he made it a little bit complicated for us because we had to pick up a lot of his work that he was doing, and we were like, "Why are you doing this? You're making it harder for everybody else."
Everybody.
So we had to fix a lot of things for him and make him right for
They,
the inmates. Because one thing we did is what you had coming, you had coming. We could help you out. We did help them out, and some people needed help. Some people just needed help, and we did our best to help them out.
my favorite story, Joyce, that kind of I tell people that kind of lets them understand how what Pedro means by, you know, he always says, "Look, there's seven of us and there's 500 of them. If they wanted to do something, they could do it, and you have to realize that." My favorite story for him is when he said he walked in and there's this long line going into a cell, and so he walks and he just gets in the line. And when it's his turn, he comes up and there's a guy making sandwiches. I think he was making grilled cheeses, right? Pedro, he's making grilled cheese sandwiches. Now Pedro could have been that officer's like, pack it up, everybody get out of here. But Pedro had the wherewithal to say, listen, he's given 15 people sandwiches already. If I stop him now, I'm gonna have a bad day. So he said, finish up and bring me all the equipment because we can't have this. Now, some people might go, well, you still let him do something he's not supposed to do. No, that's smart. You now know you're not supposed to, you already know you're not supposed to do it. He's not a child.
Yeah.
So now I'm telling you, hey, I saw you do it. Bring me the stuff. Your punishment is I'm taking this. But he doesn't have 15 angry inmates because the other 15 got sandwiches.
Right. Right.
I love that story, and I don't know why.
I mean, you have to weigh it out. I always weighed out and you probably, I don't know what you thought when you first began working. I never worked in a prison.
Mhm.
I come in, my first day was morning watch. So I come in at 11:30, and a matter of fact, the day I started working, they are walking out. The marshals are there picking up. Oh my God, what's his name? You preacher that went to prison years ago.
Oh, Jim Baker.
Jim Baker. They walking Jim Baker out at night. This way, there is no newscasters picking up. They come up the next day. They already had taken Jim Baker out. So I'm walking in about 11:15 at night, and they walking him out right in the hallway. I'm looking at this little short guy because he's like Jim Baker is no more than 5 feet 2 inches tall.
Yeah.
Sometimes he's very short. I'm like, huh. I'm like, I seen their face, but I kept walking. It was none of my business. So I'm nervous. First day at work, don't have no clue what's going on. So, what was your experience your first day at work, walking in?
My first official day, when I started, the low hadn't activated yet, and we didn't have
Oh,
inmates.
that's right.
So they sent me over to the FCI to work. And I worked in Clemson and Virginia unit. And it was around Christmas time, and all the staff were on vacation except for me.
For
I
sure.
had just started and didn't have any vacation time. And I came in one day and went to the unit, got my keys and everything, went to the unit, and there's nobody there. And I'm like, what the heck? This is only my second week out of IF, and there's nobody here but me. So a unit manager from another unit comes in and says, hey, I need a transfer order. They're rushing somebody out, and I need to get this transfer order. And I'm thinking, what is a transfer order? I don't even know what it is. So this guy in a three-piece suit comes over and says, look in this file cabinet right here, and there's the forms, and you need to go get the inmate central file and pull up a PP44, and that'll have all the information that you need to do the transfer order. And I'm like, oh, wow, thanks. So I did everything he said, typed up the transfer order. The unit manager came back and he says, well, I thought you didn't know how to do it. How'd you figure out how to do it? And I looked outside and I said, well, that guy right there told me how to do it. He's like, that's a inmate. And I'm like, he's got on a three-piece suit with a briefcase. How am I supposed to know who was a staff member and who was an inmate? Because they wore street clothes at that time. So that was my first real experience. And the inmate came back and he told me, look for the keys, look for the keys. He said, that way you'll be able to tell who was staff
Who's
and who
staff?
was inmate.
And it changed not shortly after that. It did change
Yeah,
the uniform. But yeah, I started working. They had civilian clothes. A lot of them had civilian clothes. Some very few of them have uniforms. And then we went to uniforms. I remember that. So um, that was kind of weird. Yeah, look for the keys. You have keys? Oh, I have no idea, especially at night. We come in and I come in on morning watch. I'm like, I don't know. Nobody really tells you everything. They expect you to know everything. I'm like, I have no clue what I'm doing. Well, my main thing is, well, let's count these. Well, I'm going to teach you how to count. We're going to count these guys and make sure everybody's here. That
right,
was the main thing. Let's count them, make sure nobody's gone, everybody's here. Once the counts are done, especially in the morning watch, everything else is coasting. We'll just do this and wait for breakfast in the morning. Then we go home. Like, oh, okay. That was my first experience. I didn't know. And you had a great, like, I don't know. What am I supposed to do here? How am I supposed to take this paperwork? It's
yeah. And at that time, they didn't have Sentry and have it on the computer that you could type it up. You had a form that was like a triple form that you had to type up, and I didn't know any of that.
so you learn as you went. Learn
Yeah,
on the job, OJT.
learn on the job.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing, and they always expected you. That's one thing that always tickled me about working in prison or in the bureau. I don't know. They expected you to know, and nobody explained to you anything. I'm like, well, don't you know? No, I never worked in prison. What am I supposed to do? Got these guys. I got 96 guys in here with me at one time. If I'm working a unit, housing unit, a minimum of nine. Usually, Clemson was the smallest unit. They had like what 50 something inmates. Then you have
Yeah,
Virginia. Then you had Georgia Tech. We had how many inmates in Georgia Tech? It was like 300, something like that, because you had 150 on each side, somewhere around there. So, and maybe you had somebody else working in morning watch with you. Sometimes, most of the time, um, it was you and
right,
300 inmates.
right,
And that's what I always thought in the back of my head. These guys decide they want to take over. What am I supposed to do? Oh, you push that little red button. We had that little box, the red box
right,
we carried
right.
for years, and then
Body alarm.
yeah, I can't push the body alarm. Okay, how fast can y'all get down here with 100 people right here? If I got, it's not gonna happen.
Right,
And now that I understood.
right.
That was just it. Just came with a job. Came with a job.
And then
And,
they would have body alarms over there, and people would be running, and I'm like, where am I? Where am I going? I don't even know where I'm supposed to be running to. So they were like, just stay here, and I'm like, the few people that are here are now running, and I'm here with the inmates by myself. So yeah, that was a little weird until I got used to it.
it is. It is. Joyce, you just made me think. The last, I think that last few months I was working. Um, I ended up doing an IF class. And by the time I'm a lieutenant, so I'm doing a class, and this girl, when one girl started asking questions, I said, "No, that's not going to happen. This is what happens. You got to do this. You got to do that, that, that." That was during the morning, and come back and show up. After everybody went to lunch, we come back, and I said, "Where's such and such?" I don't know. So I go and ask the people at the HR or friend, "What happened to?" Oh, she quit. I don't know what you told her this morning, what you said in that class. She just gave everything and she left. I said, well, I was being honest. You come in, you want to ask questions, but I give you the honest part. Yeah, no, that's not going to. If somebody else going to be there, no, probably you're going to be alone just dealing with an inmate and probably you and another 100 inmates. And she was like, no, I'm not going to work. She
What what
quit. She quit an IF.
what is so for us that don't know what that is? What is that?
IF is you in initial training when you come in. It's just your first training that you're gonna receive. You get they use how many weeks when it was like 2 weeks for us. Then they're changing out to 3 or 4 weeks now. It's a little bit
Yeah,
longer.
I think it was 2 when I started, and then it went to 3.
Yeah, and it's just initial training. We walk them through, you know, what is your job, what it consists of. Then we walk you through first aid. We walk you through um, dealing with riot, doing disturbance control training, and just a whole bunch of stuff that you have to learn before we put you inside the institution in a unit or onto work. So everybody goes through this class. It doesn't matter what your job is, and
Right,
we everybody has an idea what is the job as a correctional officer. Because basically, even though you have a job, and Joyce was a case manager, but she also ran the unit from time to time. She had to do other things because it was required for everybody at some point to work as an officer.
right.
You know, especially doing annual refresher training (ART), and we always end up running short of people, and they trying to figure out how can we have enough people on shifts and have well people that weren't usually officers had to end up working as officers. Some officers closed, and it got really complicated throughout the years because we started. First we had the FCI. We only had so many people. Then we brought in the low, and then it kept growing. Now, but all of a sudden we had 1,600 people we had to train, and the time period, well, usually it was January. January,
Mhm.
come in January, probably half February. When we ended up having 1,600 people, we started in January, and it went all the way to what, May sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes May.
Doing training, refresher training for all the staff. You are required to have refresher training on a yearly basis. And Joyce, did you know that every agency in the DOJ has ART? Every agency, and I talked to the guys from the DEA, and they were like, they went through the same suffering that we did. I would talk to the people in the marshals. They had the same problem, the
Mhm.
same things that we went through with people and staffing, and people just not paying attention. I'm like, my God, why am I talking to these people and they just don't care? He said, we
Right,
go through the same thing.
But
It was funny.
you know why, Pedro? It's the same. So me and Pedro, we coach actors and models, and people. We always hear people say, "Oh my God, Hollywood's so bad," and I say, people, Hollywood is the same as society, the army, the police force, the prison system, the school system, everywhere. You have the same people. You have really good people. You have some crappy people. You have people that have attention to detail, and you have people who don't listen.
right.
And you have to repeat the same thing over and over again. Because
Over and over.
any job you have, if you're a person who's proficient at your job, you're annoyed by annual training because you sit there in the first 2 hours and you're like, I already know this, I already know this, I already know this. Yeah, that makes sense. But you have to do it because you have people that don't pay attention. Also, absorbing the people who are, you would think it goes without saying that people around you who are really good at their job, you want to shadow them and pick their brain and absorb what they're doing. But that's in a perfect world, right?
Right.
That's in a perfect world.
And
Um,
everybody knows who the good employees are and
yeah,
who was good at their job and who wasn't. Because they would say, oh, such and such is going to come over and they want to shadow you. And we're like,
yeah,
they're not even a good person.
yeah.
No, I don't want to shadow with them.
Yeah.
And sometimes good employee, like people think good employees is someone who's just, doing all the most outstanding thing. No, it's like you gave the example of that case where the Hispanic guy came in and said, "Are you going to get me off? Are you going to get me out?" And you stopped for a second and you went and looked at it, right? The people that always like, the thing I always hated at work is that's not my job description, or the people who do the bare minimum. You know how like you call an operator and you say, hey, I have a problem. They're like, oh, well, that's not in our policy. We can't do it. It's like, okay, bye. Then you call back again, get an operator. Well, let me see what I can do.
Right.
Right? Like those are the people who are good at their job.
Right.
Those that are willing to go a little beyond, above and beyond, not
Right.
just. um, like me and Pedro always talk about, not just look at it as this is the time that I clock in. What do I have to do to maintain until I get to the clock out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But but you also had me thinking. We had the fortunate. We were fortunate, Joyce, that where we worked, we had the opportunity to help because the environment that we created. Because I think Butler creates that environment that is that we don't have to deal with inmates in a way that other institutions have to deal with inmates.
Right. We didn't have a lot of gang activity.
Guys did not go for it. They came in. I had so many guys. I had one guy that I remember many guys, but this guy, Hispanic guy, um, gang member, and he's like he's scared. I'm worried. I'm like, 3 months later he comes to my office. I'm like, man, I feel okay. Why, man? I can go in the shower and not wear my boots. I can go and feel relaxed. And he said, I threw my piece away because he got there and he created a fig, a shank. Because inmates in penitentiaries, that's the first thing they do. They arm themselves. They have stuff that they sleep with. They'll tie it into the arm. They'll have something they can reach and fight immediately because you don't know who's going to fight you.
Mhm.
We didn't have to deal with that. Even at the medium at the deuce, we we still have some issues, but
Right.
it was into the category that some other places like that would have to deal with on a daily basis. I had to deal with that as a lieutenant. Some guys cut up each other. I had to go in one night. I got going one night at count time. I got two guys standing face to face. They look like they've been watching the movie Carrie. They are in blood from head to toe. They have blood from head to toe. They've been fighting. They cut each other up. They got cuts all over the face, all over the body, and they're so tired that they're not moving. But they're in another world because your adrenaline is going. And I walked to the door and I told the guys, lay down on the ground, lay down, come, we're coming in. One guy just lay down and he just started shaking. The other guy just looked at me, shook. He sat down, put his shoes on. He wasn't listening. He was putting his shoes on. He was ready to get cuffed. I said, no, lay down. And I told him in Spanish. Then he realized, oh my God, I got to lay down. It wasn't the shoes that I wanted. So we got him out. I know one of them got really, really sick, and the other one fell asleep like 15 minutes later. When adrenaline kicked off and came down, and the other one throws up. It's just that. But we had to bathe them just to find where they were cut, and they were just all tore up.
Dave or host? No, I'm just kidding. Well, I don't remember if it was you who told me, Pedro, or someone else that, you know, wherever you are, the inmates that are there for the long haul, right? If you have them in the right mindset, they'll get everybody else in the right mindset because they don't want new people coming in and ruin the peace that's already been made. Like, no, 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 young fella, we don't do that here.
No,
You know,
Yeah.
and that's and I don't know why. And Joyce, we've been trying to figure out this for years, but it seems like Butner as a whole, it didn't matter whether it was the medical center, the low, the FCI, the FCI2, the camp. Um, it created that environment for the inmates. I don't know why. What was the difference? Because I went to visit other institutions that was not like that. I went to Memphis. It was crazy. We went to Big Sandy and other places, and this was like some places were war.
well, I think Joyce may say something different or agree. Um, Not working in the system you guys work in, but even being on different military bases and being in different environments, I think of it, a lot of it has to do from the top to the bottom, the leadership. How is the leadership maintaining its employees, its officers, its counselors, its staff? How is the officers, the staff, the counselors treatment of the inmates? They're already in prison, you know. Like my dad used to tell my mom when she constantly kept yelling at me after I've been whooped and sent to my room with the door closed, and she's still yelling at me. He's like, "Why are you still yelling at him? He's been beaten. He's in the room, and the door's closed. Like, what else? What else can you do?"
What
And
else?
I think it's that all of that um, combines with each other, because it's just like when we used to go train with other units, and we're like, "Why is this unit so ate up?" And then we meet with the leadership, and we're like, "Oh, because the leadership is ate up, from the top to the bottom, and they've created that environment for it not to be safe. They've got they've got, look at the places where, here's a prison system where 9 officers were fired because they were all delivering contraband. Well, that's a culture that has been developed. New officer comes in, let me show you the ropes. You can
Right.
make money doing this, you can make money doing that. When I come to you, Pedro, you're not giving me that skill. You're not teaching me how to get contraband in as an officer. You're not teaching me how to skate through my shift. So
Right.
I think that's where it starts. I could be wrong, but that's just looking outside. I think that's where it starts. From
Right.
talking to the inmates that have been on here, they always say the same thing. They respected the counselors because you guys were always honest. You treated them fairly. You talked to them with respect. You didn't treat them like animals. If you treat them like animals, they're going to act like animals.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Leadership. Who do you remember? I know you had some when you went to work at the low. We had, I mean, all the people that we had as wardens throughout the year. Because most of the people, I don't know, I noticed this, that most people that came to Butner used it as a stepping stone to move up somewhere else. They were moving. We didn't move. We were there. We were homestead.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know if you know, who do you remember as leaders?
My favorite, well, when I started, we had Vic Loy,
Hmm.
and he was strictly old school. When inmates would be on landscaping, they had those push mowers and they had scissors to edge the lawn with. They didn't have the clippers, all the electrical stuff. They had none of that. It was plain and simple. You're going to get out there and work all day and be tired and go to bed, and that's it. Then we got Reverend, or not Reverend.
Woo, y'all gave inmates scissors. Woo,
Yes. Well, they were round edge, not point
They're
edge scissors.
those hurt more. You ever been stabbed with a dull edge? It ain't fun. Just stab me, please.
Then we have Warden Vanier, that was a psychologist, and he wanted to get into the minds and figure out everything that the inmates were doing. But my favorite was probably Warden Dodrell. I don't
Dodger.
know if you were there when Dodrell was there.
I wasn't at the low when Dodger was there, but I
Yeah,
remember Dodger because I had to deal with him. I think he
yeah.
was
He
so
select,
eloquent.
yeah, he selected me as a case manager, and I had this inmate, young guy, young black guy, that was eligible to go to the camp. So I put him in to go to the camp, and the warden denied it. And I said, "Why?" He meets all the criteria. He said he's young, he has no family ties, uh, he's got a extensive history, and he's still got 9 years left to do, because you could only go to a camp if you had 10 years or less. And I said, "No, no, no, he's going to be fine." He said, "Nope, give him another year, tell him take some more classes." So I did. We waited another year. The inmate took some more classes, had a good record, no incident reports, put him in for the camp. He went to Mariana, and by this time, Warden Dodrell had got promoted to Northeast Regional Director. And the inmate got to the camp in Mariana, Florida, and escaped. Don't you know, Warden Dodrell called me, "Hey, this is Scott.
He
You know
doesn't.
that inmate of yours that you wanted to send to the camp so bad?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "He escaped." He said, "That's why I told you he should not go." He said, "One lesson that you need to learn: don't put your name on anybody that you are not sure of." And that inmate was on the run for almost 2 years, and they finally caught him. And hey, this is Scott. we finally caught that inmate that you wanted to go to the camp so bad. After that, if I didn't know for sure that that inmate was a good pick to go somewhere, I would tell, and I even had to tell some wardens, no, I'm not going to do that. You're going to have to put your name on that. I'm not going to do that one.
I was gonna say you better meet Joyce. I'd be like, hey, send him right here. I need to look right in the right in the face. It's I didn't think about that because I'm trying to liken things to the military because again I never worked in a prison. When you're working in a spot where the head leadership can change throughout your entire career, because every leader wants to come and put their stamp on it because they're thinking about their career too. They're trying to go to the next step.
Well,
And sometimes that comes with great fanfare and like, oh my God, this is amazing. Sometimes that comes with, man, what we were doing was working. Why are we changing it?
right, right. And Lugo knows our two housing units,
Mhm.
we pretty much stuck together. And if they wanted something done that we did not feel was right and was not going to go good, we all stuck together and were like, no, we're not doing that.
No.
But the other two units, they would fall right in line and go ahead and do it, and it wouldn't work out. And we were like, see, we all stuck together. We may not have all liked each other,
Mhm.
but when it came down to sticking together, we stuck together.
Especially when it comes to inmates, because you guys work hard to get them into a routine, right?
Mhm.
And the last thing you want to do is disrupt that routine, especially when if they're doing it well, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So I can see that. It's not you're fighting against it just to be unruly employees. You're like, and sometimes when someone, uh, did you ever get a like the wardens that you got where they had prior warden experience, or did you ever get someone that was like, hey, this is their first rodeo?
I think just about everybody we got was their first rodeo, and some did exceptionally well, and some failed miserably.
Now I want to ask you a question because this could parallel everyone that's listening out there, no matter what job capacity you are, because I want to see if it's the same for my experience in the military. The people who came in charge that did very well, were they more open to listening to you guys? And
Yep,
there you go.
Yeah.
It's always the same. That one that comes in and says, "Well, why do you guys do that? Why do you guys do this? Instead of coming and going, well, this is what we're gonna do."
right. And they had an open door policy. You could go down and talk to them at any time. And they would come up to the units and walk around, ask what you're doing, what you're working on, bring inmates in to talk to them. And then the other ones were like, nope, this is how it is, and this is how it's going to be, and this is what I want. And we would be like, well,
We're like, okay, that's not going to work. We how many times did we? Well, okay, you wanted to go that way, that's fine, but that is just not going to work. But we'll do it anyway.
yeah,
And we just sat
I
back
know
and
with some
watched.
people, I get you, Pedro, because sometimes I'd be like, well, the average person in this position is usually here for 4 years, so I guess I have to tolerate this for 3.5 years, and then we'll see about it.
Yeah. And what
Oh man.
Joyce? What you think about? We had some inmates that were, kind of famous. Anybody that come to mind that you can think of? I know I got one. I want to ask you about him in a minute, but go ahead.
well, I had one that was part of the American Gangster story
Mhm.
with Denzel
Yeah.
Washington in it.
Mhm.
And then you guys had the congressman, um,
Duke Cunningham. Duke,
yep, Duke
yeah.
Cunningham. I had the Adelphia cable company guys that were billionaires.
Wait, what they do?
Um, Wire fraud, money laundering,
Got you.
um, stole money from their corporation, from the board of directors. They were wealthy, like
So stupid. It's
several
always
time billionaires.
it's always the people that have it, right? Um, I think we did it. We did an episode on that, and I know everybody we did on the last episode didn't go through Butner, but I believe the Unabomber spent time at Butner, right?
I think they ended up going to the FMC here his last
Uh,
few years.
Yeah.
Bernie Madoff did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Number
And
one.
then of course R. Kelly.
R.
Yeah.
Kelly is there now, and that's one of the few because we had
Joyce, you should have been R. Kelly's counselor. You need to go back. You need to be his counselor.
no, we had
You know what, Joyce?
Jesse
I could wait. Hold on a
Jesse
second,
Jackson's son.
because I'm trying to get.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
getting Joyce's personality down, and I don't know if Joyce saw the interview with Gail King and R. Kelly. Did you see that
Yeah, that
interview?
would be
I
me.
feel like that would be you. He'd be like, and you'd be like, Robert, Robert, now Robert.
She would, yeah, she would. That was it. She would tell the inmates.
Yep, that would be me.
Believe me, I see many inmates do this, and I'd be in the back, and she'd be talking to them very serious. It's like they didn't want to look at her. They just stopped, after, not like other case manager. They just want to
You
be
know
like,
what? That's a
"Look,
sign of and you know what that look is, Joyce. And I can tell not even being there. It's one thing to have somebody mad at you. It's another thing to have somebody sound disappointed in you. It's a whole different feeling. You can be
Right.
mad at me all day, but when you're disappointing at me, oof, that's when the eyes start to
you know, I
go
never thought about it
down.
that way, but that's probably a lot of them did not want to disappoint you. And I
Yeah, because I
probably
could feel, and that's a it's a mom thing too, and I could feel her doing that. The way she's talking to him is like, I'm disappointed. Uh, and like that guy that escaped, if he would have came back to you, it wouldn't have been the anger. It would have been the look of disappointment in your face.
Disappointment. Yeah. Yep. I had one inmate that had violated and went back before the judge to be resentenced. And he told the judge, please do not send me back to Butner to my case manager. And the judge called me and said, this is Judge such and such. And I'm like, yeah, right. Because it didn't go through the screening process.
Mhm.
So I said, well, give me your number and I'll have to call back to verify you're who you say you are. And I called back and it was like, Judge such and such. And I'm like, oh, this is really a judge. I was just thinking it was somebody playing a prank. And I said, well, how can I help you? He said, do you know inmate such and such? And I said, yeah, he was on my caseload. And he said, well, he is before me in court and I'm going to have to resentence him. And he's looking about at getting another 5 years. And he is pleading with me not to send him back to you. And he said, do you know why? And I said, yeah, because I stayed on him like white on rice all the time. He just never wanted to listen. He always wanted to do what he wanted to do. I said, and I told him, you're going to learn the hard way. It is what it is. And the judge said, he's coming back to you. I'm going to send him back. That inmate was he avoided me like the plague. He only came to see me when he had to.
wow.
Hey,
Um,
what we want is not always what we need, right?
Right,
pretty
right.
much.
What we want is always what we. Guys, before Pedro wraps it up, everybody listening, we're doing the channel is becoming very, very healthy. Make sure you check out other shows on
Yes, I
Keone
will.
Productions. We have so many different shows. If you like astrology, if you like tarot, if you like crime, we have Crime Chronicles with Mark Jones. If you like talk shows, we have Pretty Smart, which is a talk show that's hosted by minority women. We have Asiatic Genetics, which is an all Asian cast. Um, We also have game shows. We have so many different things for you guys out there to enjoy. So please make sure you like and subscribe to the channel and get familiar with the different shows that are on Keanu Productions. I'm going to step
Okay.
away to do some back producing stuff. I'm going to let Pedro and Joyce finish it up.
All right. Thank you.
Uh, Joyce, one last question. Retirement. Now that you retire, how is this working out now?
It it is the ending that we all work for. You know, all that drama that we went through and that we put up with. Um, Retirement is great.
Will you
I
do it again?
miss, Yes, I would. I would. I like my job. I liked my crew. I liked everybody that I work with, and I enjoyed it. And I miss that interaction. I don't miss all the drama and the administration drama. But I enjoyed working with the inmates. And Brown and I always say we think we did a good job. And
I think we did our best.
yes,
We missed breakfast.
we got to do a breakfast. Yeah, we had some good breakfasts.
We had some good breakfast. All
Yeah,
right. Well, Joyce, it's been a pleasure seeing you. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Hopefully,
you
we can
too.
do some other time outside of here, some kind of something else. But this has been awesome just seeing you once more and having this conversation. Thank
Well,
you
thank
so
you
much.
for having me.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Um, and that's it, folks. Thank you, everybody. And if you have any comments, any information, anything you want to share, please contact us at onthecount.podcast@gmail.com. That'll be wonderful. Do watch us, comment, subscribe to the channel. Everybody, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Hopefully, we'll see you soon. We got some more stuff coming up.
Why you want them to write you an email? You don't read them.
Oh, I read them if I get them. If I have read them, yes. You can. Matter of fact, Keone, you can go ahead and
Change.
email me anytime you want. I read them all the time. All right, everybody, that was it. Keone, any last words? If not, everybody,
Yeah, I
have.
sent you an email. I wanted to borrow $50. You never answered. That's how I know you don't answer your emails.
Oh, okay. I missed that one. All right,
Y'all have
everybody,
a good
have a
one.
great, great day. Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Bye bye.
Let's be safe, everyone.
Okay. Bye bye.